Good morning. Welcome to the last day of the Consciousness in Science, and we'll see how many of you can be conscious after all we've gone through. And how many of you slept last night like you had Hamroff's anesthesia? I suspected that would happen. We have many different ways to lullaby ourselves to sleep. For those in the Krishna movement, you know our very famous lullaby. You all know, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we have many different lullabies. And so I hope you all slept well. Before I turn it over to our Master of Ceremonies, I'd like to again offer a special thanks and acknowledgments. First of all, to the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, with a generous grant, enabled all this to come and for us to fly in devotees from all over the world. And those who are not from America, please raise your hands for a moment. And let's see what countries we have. We have Israel and India, and where else do we have? Brazil, and where else? And yeah, everyone just stand up who's from another country. Not America. And now I see a few Americans standing who are too embarrassed by our president and are trying to stand. You can't do that now. You can't do that. You have to just suck it up, as we say. Okay, so let's go around the room and name your country, then sit down. And that way, it's easier than calling on everyone. You start.
Israel. India. Australia. Wales.
Okay. Sure. England? Okay. Ukraine. Very good. And then we have online, and we so a good international audience, and I'm from another country called New Jersey. It's a place where English is a second language for those who are aware of things. And so first of all, we want to thank the BBT for bringing in and giving us a generous grant to make all of this happen. Prabhupada had asked the BBT way back to sponsor the BI, and they stepped up to the plate. We want to thank the Alachua County Board of Commissioners for giving us a tourist development grant, some private donors for helping us out in other ways, and Campus Krishnas for sponsoring the Harn Museum on Friday night. A special thanks goes to those behind the scenes who have worked tirelessly for well over a year. I mean, we're talking day and night. And we have Prishni, also known as Barbara Sutton, who worked thousands and thousands of hours. We have Tulsi Rani, Emily Tessel, who's in the next room, who every morsel in your mouth, every table in the right place, every tablecloth in the right place, every volunteer being where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there, was all her doing. And quite a bit of doing, I might add. We're going more. I have a list here I'm just looking at. We have Ashish Agarwal, who tirelessly set up our web page. We have Tamarparni, Thomas Chapoprieta, who's somewhere around here, who tirelessly worked to make sure we're broadcasting and all of the audio-visual worked. And Udi, who's working our board. We have Animesh, who tirelessly worked to get all our graphics done, and which is very difficult when I keep changing my mind, but he tolerated it anyway. We have Rodney Sebastian, Rupa Chandra, who worked to lasso in some of his colleagues to come here, which we're very, very grateful about, and made all of their arrangements for the Indian contingent to come for every detail. We have our core committee, which included Murali Gopal and Mauricio Garrido and Ryan Bassett, Ramananda, who worked unlimited hours to coordinate and make things work. We have Jonathan Banks, Pracharananda, who attended unlimited meetings from Canada, did intense brainstorming, reviewed abstracts, and gave us brilliant suggestions to keep it moving. And there were many others I missed, but last, but definitely not the least, is my good friend and colleague who, without his brilliant insights, and I mean this without any hyperbole or exaggeration, without his wisdom and cool-headed way of looking at things, we never could have organized the conference. That's Martin Fleming, known as a Condidi. When he realized mistakes that we were kind of, for those who had seen the Abbott and Costello routine, Who's on First? And if you haven't, I highly recommend it. When he understood that, he flew all the way from England, very quietly sat with us for a week, and then this conference popped out of that. So we are very, very grateful. We're particularly appreciative of Joshua Greene, Yogeshwar, for really stepping up to the plate and trying to help us organize how to memorialize this conference in a way that would be meaningful, and that those who didn't attend will get something wonderful out of it, which is probably more important than being at the conference. And then her colleague Krishna Leela, the famous filmmaker, working tirelessly to make interviews work. And of course, your able assistant, Alicia, who I am planning on kidnapping because her organizational abilities are beyond what I can imagine. So we're planning a kidnapping. Then we have behind the scenes cooks and drivers and unlimited volunteers, and our own Vaninath, who had the thankless, miserable task of trying to get our speakers to stop when they're supposed to. And I knew it was the most miserable task, but he was up to the occasion. And there are countless many more to thank, but I wanted to offer all this special recognition, and I did leave out from the Krishna House, our own Badahari, who behind the scenes very quietly keeps working all the little electronics to make everything work. And my apologies for those who I forgot, but even Prishni's sister, who just walked in, flew in and for 4 days did nothing but drive and shuttle and run errands. She's a consummate professional in her own right and came in just to serve that conference. We wanted to make sure every guest, especially our distinguished guests coming in from all over, were treated with the utmost care. Every one of their little needs were met. And behind the scenes, she made sure that every guest felt very, very comfortable. And again, if there's any guest who doesn't feel comfortable in any way, see any of us I mentioned, and we are here to honor every comfort. So with that acknowledgement, I thank you very much. I guess we have given out evaluation sheets. This conference has had its highs and its lows. I sit here as a director. All I see is all the things that went wrong. And I want to hear about that. Because Tuesday we're having the most important meeting. We're going to sit down, our core group, I just named, said, what worked, what didn't work. So I want you to be unkind and write down what didn't work. But if you like, yeah, we're going to hand out these forms now. if you like something, you can also say that sometimes, but we really need to know. It can be anonymous. You can put your name. That's your choice. This is extremely important for us. Before the end of the day, please turn it in to any of us. But we ask you to take 5 or 10 minutes. It's really, really important for us. It's not a checkbox thing. It requires a little bit of thought. So that evaluation form will help us move on. Finally, tomorrow, for those who are scientists within ISKCON and visitors, you're invited to my house for a post-conference session on what all this means for the Bhaktivedanta Institute. Those who are invited know who you are. If we left someone out, come and see me, and we'll make sure the invitation is extended. That's at 9 o'clock tomorrow. With that, announcements are over. We're only running about 15 minutes behind, so we're ahead of where I wanted to be. Now I'll turn it over to the Master of Ceremonies. Thank you very much, Yogi.
Welcome to day 3 of the Gainesville edition of Survivor. A lot going on here. Sometimes it's a little bit too much. I had one young man come up to me this morning and saying that he was having trouble sleeping because of all the different ideas and different cultures that are being represented, and so many references to foreign environments, and said he was having bad dreams. 2 nights ago he dreamed that he had become a canvas Mongolian desert yurt. And last night he said he dreamed that he had become a Native American teepee. So I told him candidly, I think your problem is you're too tense. Come on. You paid your money. You take your chances. It'll be over in a few hours. Today we begin with a presentation on the founders of the Bhaktivedanta Institute. I think you will find it fascinating to get inside the thinking of people who were at the forefront of bringing the ancient Vedic notion of consciousness and Puranic cosmology to contemporary audiences. Then there'll be a break, about 10:30, followed by a presentation on current research projects that seek to bridge science with that ancient Vedic perspective. If you check your schedule, you'll see that from there we're going to go to a series of breakouts. And there's got a fascinating choice of breakouts. And I've been given a list of the rooms, so if you know which one you would like to go to, let me just tell you which rooms they'll be held in. Breakout A, the Atma paradigm, will be in the main room. What's the main room? In this room. Okay, Atma paradigm in this room. Breakout B, teaching the science of consciousness, that will be in the downstairs kitchen. Then we break for lunch, and in the afternoon, breakout C, application of ancient text in research and archaeology and biology, that will be here in the main room. Breakout D, Vedic perspectives, will be held in room 105. Does anyone know where room 105 is? Over there, on the right, okay. And breakout E, Ayurveda and modern medicine, will be downstairs in the kitchen. Then from 3 to 4, there will be the concurrent breakouts. Breakout F, ecology and dharma, is here in the main room. Cosmology in the Puranas and Jyotish Shastra in 105 next door. And finally, breakout H, yoga and science, will be downstairs in the kitchen. Okay, that's it. The final presentation of the day you don't want to miss. That'll be a plenary, and it'll be on the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium. We have 2 presenters for that. That's an historic project. If you're not aware of what's going on there, I think this will be quite an eye-opener for you. So without further ado, is Bob Cohen here? All right. Here to present our presentations on the founders of the Bhaktivedanta Institute, Bob Cohen.
That one's not working yet? Hello? Is that working? We'll have a little game. Just pass these around. Pass these around for a minute. Just cover the whole room. Just pass it around, take a look, and just for a moment. Okay. So, which one's me? Oh, which one? Who says the... Who thinks I'm the one on the left? Okay. Who thinks I'm the short guy on the right with the glasses? Okay. Who thinks I'm the Indian-looking fellow? Okay. Who thinks I'm the one in the middle? That's it. That's 1977, first International Conference on Life Comes from Life. I wanted to prove that all of you who have seen the Changing Body exhibit, it's true. In case you didn't believe me, I also want to prove I did have hair. So there's a few points. The Bhaktivedanta Institute was founded, some say 75, some say 76. There's different correspondence on it. But I think it was around 75. And then there was a famous meeting in Washington with all the scientists. And the Institute was founded with the intent of bridging the gap between what we read in various ancient literatures and what we see in the phenomenological world. And Prabhupada felt it was very important that this ancient science be presented to an intelligent class of people. And the intelligent class of people are very much represented by the science community, though by the science community, the original definition went beyond scientists. It included those in the humanities. This conference is a successor conference to the first international conference on Life Comes from Life, which I sent the picture around. At that conference, it was Prabhupada's intention that his own scientists, there weren't many of us, and famous scientists, and a few of them were very famous, come together and have a dialogue. And every night, Prabhupada would call us to his room and ask, he was too sick to come himself, and he would ask what What were their arguments? What were your arguments? What was discussed? He wanted a dialogue. And a dialogue he got. And the topic was, does life come from matter or does life come from life? And one of the scientists from Delhi came and he presented this idea of liquid crystals, that liquid crystals could explain consciousness. You get them as toys, you press them and they turn all kinds of colors. So he was going for a Nobel Prize. And he had this idea that liquid crystals could actually explain it. And he had some theory in thermodynamics and he applied it. We had a response to it. But after his talk, he asked for questions. And one lady kept raising her hand and he wouldn't call on her. Finally, he answered all the questions. This one lady was still raising her hand. So he had to call on her. So she stood up and said, I am his wife. And all this atheistic nonsense he's saying, he goes to the temple with me all the time, don't worry. Prabhupada liked that story too. That actually happened. So the purpose of the Institute, I'm going to read a little statement here. Prabhupada was never one to criticize modern materialistic science per se, but only insofar as it ignores and rejects the fully verifiable findings of the higher science of transcendence, of which he was an unquestioned master. He was especially critical of the life comes from matter theory, and thus charged the Bhaktivedanta Institute with the primary task of disproving this through the use of the most sophisticated techniques of modern math, chemistry, physics, and of course other sciences. So that was the original intention, and the intention continues. We gathered together today to continue with that. At this point, I want to offer some appreciations for some of our founders. And one of our founders is sitting right here in the room. Can anyone guess who that is? Yes. Yes, Rabindra Swarup. Rabindra Swarup, could you stand up for a moment? Rabindra Swarup, William Deadwyler, was a renegade. He did something that wasn't done much by those days. He actually tried to get educated in the university. And eventually got his PhD from Temple University. So he just went from one temple to another. Okay, that was bad. And was one of the original founders of what we do. Would you like to say any words at some point this morning on the founding of the Institute? Okay, in a moment we'll have you up there. We'd appreciate that very much. And then another founder was Rupanuga, who's not here today but lives in the area. And of course, the primary founder of the Institute is, of course, our beloved Thoudam Singh, Sri Damodara Maharaj, and we're going to offer a special appreciation for him. He passed away some years ago, but he was a PhD in chemistry, earned in America, but coming from Manipur, and we'll talk about a little bit his particular contribution to founding the Institute and why this is relevant for a conference on conscience and science is because the purpose of the BI is to understand this, what is the difference between conscience and science. That's just life from life in modern terms. We do it through scientific endeavor. We do it through analysis. We do it through philosophy, all of this has been presented. But to wrap this up and make sense out of it, we want to look a little bit about how this BI came about, what it's about, and so we can continue with our mission. At this point, I'm going to ask Rabindra to, William Deadwyler, to say a few words, and then we'll continue.
Shall I just hold it? Got it? Hare Krishna. I was surprised to find myself in the Bhaktivedanta Institute when the list was drawn up, because I'm not a scientist. My background is undergraduate at the University of Pennsylvania, a philosophy major, and then ended up when Temple University in Philadelphia turned out to be one of the first universities to have religious studies and academic religious studies. And Penn had turned me up so much on atheistic philosophy, and they hated religion so much that I decided maybe I should check it out. And so I joined the religion department at Temple University, and my third year there I heard ching, ching, ching. And anyway, so then I got interested in Krishna consciousness. I'd finished all my coursework by then, 3 years of coursework. Kept signing up for dissertation research while I joined a temple, not knowing it was going to be dissertation. Joined a temple in the beginning of 71, and by the end of 71, I was the temple president, simply because I was the oldest guy there and the only one who'd held down a job. That was so. And then I was. And I just kept signing up for dissertation research and kept myself on the rolls. And then I was approached by, and Rupanuga was my GBC, and he said that Prabhupada had this idea of wanting to have this Bhaktivedanta Institute. And I said, I'm not a scientist. I said, I'm a philosopher, theologian is my background. He says, no, but we really want all kinds of intellectual people who are intellectually qualified. And the other one that I knew was Sariputta. I had met Sariputta years before. When I was in the temple, I wrote Prabhupada a letter asking him if he had a suggestion for my doctoral dissertation topic. And he said, if you want, he said, you could defeat Darwin. And that put me in a state of shock. I spent a large part of my life in Oklahoma and Texas, and I knew these people who didn't believe in Darwin. You know, these kind of, to me, big, stupid neon Jesus save signs. And I said, my God, is that what's going to happen to us? You know, I mean. And then one day, a traveling Sankirtan party from New Vrindavan came, and Sariputta was on that. He had just joined the movement in New Vrindavan. Because he had a PhD in mathematics, they made him the treasurer. But he lacked all the real skills of a temple treasurer. Where are your receipts? Where's the change? You know, that kind of stuff. So they didn't know what to do with him, so they put him on traveling Sankirtan. And he showed up at my temple. And when I found out, he had just finished with his PhD in mathematics, I got this letter and showed him this letter from Prabhupada. Said, if you want, you can defeat Darwin. I said, do you know any way you could defeat Darwin? And this is what he said, the most unforgettable words. He said, oh yes, he says, most mathematicians know that Darwin is wrong, but they don't say anything because it upsets the biologists so much. So, and then he began to outline, the thing that then became his argument from information theory, that life can't come from matter. So then when I heard about the Bhaktivedanta Institute and I was in it, I was happy to do that. And it was down the road from the Philadelphia Temple. They rented a house, and we were all staying there. And that's when I was able to write a doctoral dissertation, courtesy of the Bhaktivedanta Institute. The PhD I have really belongs to ISKCON, and I hope to use it in Krishna service. It was just one of these pioneering things that Prabhupada was doing. Another thing he had was the In God We Trust Party for Purified Leaders. I was also running for the House of Representatives for a while. And Balavanta. So Prabhupada had all these visionary things that were setting up the seeds for the future. And I'm glad to see that this one is still going on, and we'll see what the fruits are. But that was how we started out in planning conferences, and it was very interesting to be there. I mean, it was very nice to have all these devotees around who could talk about Krishna consciousness in a way that you could not talk about it with most devotees. And that was like the special. Plus we had good prasadam.
And tomorrow we will hear more from him at that meeting at my home. One more acknowledgement of one of the early BI, not in 1977, but right after. We have in our midst one of the very early major BI pioneers who I'd like to acknowledge. Most of you are familiar with his work. It's brilliant work, and he still continues to this day speaking. And that is Michael Cremo, our own Judah Karma. If you could stand for a moment. He has lectured before leading scientific institutions, including the Royal Institute in London, the Russian Academy of Science in Moscow, presented at the World Archaeological Congress, and has an honorary PhD, which is quite a thing to do. So we're going to hear more from him tomorrow and today during various sessions, but I just wanted to acknowledge the special pioneer in our midst and my friend and mentor in many ways. With that, I'd like to turn this session over now. We're going to do appreciations of Thoudam Damodar Singh, Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj, and this will be by B.S. Vrajendrakumar Swami, Director of the Bhaktivedanta Institute of Calcutta, B.S. Rajapati Swami, President of the Institute of Calcutta, and they are going to do a presentation, a tribute on the life and founder of the Bhaktivedanta Institute. Please come forward. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming all the way from Calcutta. Thank you.
Good morning. So,
I traveled with Dr. T.D. Singh, His Holiness Bhakti Svarupa Damodara Swami. So whenever he start a lecture, he would start with a short chanting. So I would like to invoke his presence through a short chanting. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyudhanam adharmasya tadatmanam srujamyam paritranaya sadhunam vinasaya cha dushkrutam dharma samsthapanardhaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Thank you very much. So what I present today is published, mostly is published in a book called Bhagavata Sevarpanam. Srila Prabhupada is the Bhagavat, a pure devotee of the Lord, and Seva is service to him by Dr. T.D. Singh Bhakti Svarupa Damodara Maharaj. This mostly contains what instructions Srila Prabhupada gave to Maharaj and what he did for that. So, scientist and saint, His Holiness Bhakti Svarupa Damodara Swami, Dr. T.D. Singh. In the slides which are coming, you will see some places Svarupa Damodar, because that time Maharaj's name is Svarupa Damodar Das Brahmachari. So Prabhupada would refer him as Svarupa Damodar. So some of the quotes you will see the name Svarupa Damodar. So just know that Bhakti Svarupa Damodar Swami, T.D. Singh, Svarupa Damodar, they are one and the same person. So it's very humble beginning. In Manipur, many of you know, is a beautiful valley at the foothills of Himalayas in India. It is very rich in culture, and the dance form from Manipur, which is Radha Krishna Rasa Leela, and other devotional dances, they are recognized as UNESCO heritage dance. And this is actually inspired by Lord Krishna himself in a dream to the king of Manipur. So they have Nata Sankirtan, they have drumming. Many of you must have seen some of the Ranganiketan shows in America. And it is a very beautiful place. They have special deer, and they have a lake in which there are floating islands. Some of you, there are also small houses built for the tourists sometimes. They can stay. And he is born into a Vaishnava family. His father was a devotional singer, professional devotional singer in Manipur. Every activity is centered around Krishna, devotion to Krishna. When a child is born, the nurse goes to the child and chants Hare Krishna Mahamantra in the ear of the child, because they don't want child to hear anything other than Krishna. The first thing the child they want to hear is Krishna. So he is born in a Vaishnava family, and he is something like this. But he lost his father and got separated from mother, and one of his close uncles was taking care, but he saw his uncle is very poor and he could not take care of his own daughter who is sick. So he left his uncle and started living on his own, plowing the land himself. But after some time, one of his uncles came and helped him. When he was 14 years, he had typhoid. His father died of typhoid. That time there was no cure. So the village's doctors, they declared T.D. Singh, Thoudam Damodar Singh, Svarupa Damodar is going to die. but one of the nature cure doctors, he cured it by fasting in nature cure for 41 days. So Svarupa Damodar is in his mind, and when he's grown up, he built a nature cure hospital in Manipur in the hills. That is one of his tributes to naturopathy, nature cure, alternative medicine. And in the childhood itself, he is very attracted to the devotional acts, drama, and he even missed an exam, final exam, the whole night watching the drama. So he is very attracted to the devotional culture from the very beginning, and this is education. He did B.Tech Chemical Engineering and M.Tech Pharmaceutical Science from Kolkata University. Then he came to US by government scholarship. In those days, it is very difficult to get a scholarship to come to USA because there is very less number of scholarships and a lot of competition. And this is one of the pictures. He is sitting in the front here. He's from the Calcutta. And this is when he came to University of California in 1969. And he did his PhD in an unusual phenomena, his thesis, where generally reaction rate increases when you increase the temperature. But he found the reaction rate decreases. And the opposite happens. Increase in the rate of reaction and decrease of the temperature. So anyway, he reported to the supervisor. He asked him to repeat it again, and he found the same result. And that made his PhD thesis very easy. I mean, honesty paid him very. Generally, we try to fit the curves, but he reported to the supervisor, and he said it could make your PhD. So one of his close friends, Dr. Rao, he introduced Dr. Singh to Prabhupada. It is a very wonderful story. He was asking him every day to come to meet Prabhupada, but he was a sincere student, trying to study and not divert his mind. But his friend said, if you don't come and see Prabhupada, our friendship is over today. So he was surprised why he is so serious. So he went and met and then fell in love with Srila Prabhupada. And this picture is taken by Maharaj himself when he first saw Prabhupada on the right side. And this is also taken by Maharaj, Dr. T.D. Singh. And Prabhupada said that I have come here to give the Americans something very valuable which they do not have. Why don't you do the same as I am doing? Why are you simply taking? So Maharaj was touched by Srila Prabhupada's purity of purpose, and then rest is, many of you know, started going to meet Prabhupada again and again, and morning walks, and they form the foundations for the Bhaktivedanta Institute. And one of the main central topics is that soul cannot be manufactured by combination of chemicals. And Srila Prabhupada used to give a lot of examples, and one of the examples Prabhupada is giving, see, this nail, it has no life, but it is growing from life. So it is matter which comes from life. If there is no life, matter cannot grow. So it is, this is part of the life comes from life dialogues. There are many dialogues which you can go through. And Prabhupada was always very eager to meet Svarupa Damodar Maharaj. He was always asking, where is my scientist? He was very eager, very enthusiastic. And Shrutakirti Prabhu, he remembers that Prabhupada was very eager. As soon as the car reaches the park or the beach, he would immediately just push himself out to just start the conversation on this very exciting topics. Maharaj used to bring many different research what scientists are doing and present, and Prabhupada would refute or give alternative views and Vedic views. So Prabhupada said, I thought I got an opportunity to impress that will fructify in fruition. Therefore, I was bothering you in so many ways. So we have published a book. Actually, Maharaj was working on this book, all these conversations of Maharaj with Srila Prabhupada and other conversations of Prabhupada with other founders. Whatever Srila Prabhupada spoke on topics related to science as well as academics, we have put in this book and segregated them topic-wise. So if some of you would like, it is meant for internal circulation of the members of the Bhaktivedanta Institute. So you can consult the book table. So the Bhaktivedanta Institute. So Srila Prabhupada's idea, as Prabhuji has said, that advanced people are eager to understand the absolute truth through the medium of science. Therefore, a great scientist should endeavor to prove the existence of Lord on a scientific basis. And Srila Prabhupada wanted it would be great service if you can organize such an institute. And Srila Prabhupada has declared in a letter to three people on the same day, we have formed one party of scientists. Bhaktivedanta Institute basically party of scientists and other academicians, like Prabhuji said, science, other sciences. We have formed one party of scientists under the leadership of Svarupa Damodara. We shall spare nothing to see this party's success. You can go through the conversations, they are very interesting. However, it is not very easy. Maharaj underwent a lot of struggle. In 1978, he was in Atlanta. He rented a house. Then he moved to Philadelphia. There he and other members, they have taken out bulletins, Bhaktivedanta bulletins. Then he moved to Oklahoma City, where he ran a motel to raise funds for the Bhaktivedanta Institute. And he moved to San Francisco. Atre Rishi Prabhuji gave him a house to run the BI. Then he had a building in Bombay in the middle picture. Then he got land from BI for BI in Tirupati on the top photograph, but now it is converted to ISKCON temple there. Then Maharaj also TD Singh also started the institute in Kolkata, Rome, in Bali, in Denver, and now we have other centers in India, different places, and also there is an Institute of Science and Religion, Mumbai, and we have Kharagpur, Bhubaneswar, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Karnal, Sambalpur, Vijayawada. We have some small centers we are trying to do in different places in India. One of the instructions Maharaj received from Prabhupada is to travel to colleges and universities and rigorously travel and present the alternative paradigm. I have asked him to vigorously throughout the world, lecturing with his other colleagues at all major institutions and universities. He drawn up a budget, a copy is enclosed, and I am immediately sanctioning this amount. Whatever expenditure he requires, supply him immediately from the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. So no questions asked. So Prabhupada was very clear, because what actually is stopping the God consciousness in the society, or what actually is confusing the people, is our scientific knowledge is very good, but in the other domains where it is not exactly has data, we get confused, and the general public get confused. So Srila Prabhupada wanted to present alternative paradigms on scientific basis. And Maharaj traveled to many colleges, universities around the world, and this is in Orissa, this is in Delhi, this is AIMS Delhi, and many universities and colleges around the world Maharaj traveled. This is in Brazil. And Maharaj used to say there is no conflict between science and religion to the Vedantist. A brilliant scientist can also be a devout religious person like Pastor and Planck. And some of the press. And Maharaj also started a mobile Bhaktivedanta Institute. Bhaktivedanta Institute on wheels in India. He calls it as Bhima. And to the name, the vehicle is a little big, is a kind of a truck. And it goes many places, and people just seeing it, they just come and ask about BI, and we distribute the literature. So we have total 4 BI on wheels in India. They go around India and they make news. Wherever they go, they make news. And Maharaj also started schools, because he felt this Bhagavad paradigm should be introduced early at the age. He has schools in Manipur, in Agartala, and he has many dialogues with the research scholars, scientists. So this is Ahmad Jiwail in Caltech, and many of the Nobel laureates he met. Charles Towns, Werner Arbor, he is physicist, he is a biologist, and Penrose, he had a dialogue, and McDermott from chemistry Nobel laureate, And very interesting is William Phillips, Nobel laureate, who is in atomic clocks, physics. His research. So he was, when Maharaj was having discussion, he is very proposing how God is a person. So Maharaj was very interested, and the discussion was very nice, and there is a book. Most of these conversations are available as a form of book. And he's Nobel laureate in physiology and medicine. And Maharaj is friendly both to the evolutionists as well as to the intelligent design people. He used to have dialogue and appreciate their hard work and present Vedic paradigm and paradigm of consciousness and how it is possible to have in any paradigm, any theory. And he has many books. You are a scientist, write books, prove scientifically that God is the supreme person. So the first book Maharaj wrote, Scientific Basis of Krishna Consciousness. All of you know, Prabhupada wanted immediately to print 1 lakh copies and distribute them. And Srila Prabhupada also wanted Maharaj to write scientific commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. And we have conversation between Prabhupada and Maharaj. Prabhupada guiding how to write and 2-3 were slokas. And Maharaj published books on the first few slokas. And we have research journal. Maharaj started research journal. There was a discussion with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada gave this name, Savijnanam. And we have so far 9 volumes. We bring out once in a year. And this is first volume has interview with Charles Towns. This was the President of India. And we also have a magazine. Maharaj wanted it to be once in a year, but so far we could bring out only 2 in 10-15 years. And this is meant to be more easier. Yeah, it's supposed to be easy reading for the students with multidisciplinary content. And there are many books, not many are present. You can look at the table. If you need books, you can write here. And one of the instructions Maharaj got was to make Manipur a scientific Vaishnava culture spread in Manipur. So Maharaj started a temple and a university there. University is in making. And these are the deities in Manipur. This is Radha Krishna Chandra. And Maharaj also is very active in art and culture. He started Ranganiketan, which performed in 600 performances at over 300 venues in over 15 countries. Your scientific presentation should be accompanied by cultural troupe. So science sometimes is very dry, so theories we can experience the last 2 days. So we need refreshing. So Maharaj tried his best to accompany a troupe, but not always available because finance is always constrained. But he would not give up. He himself would do cultural presentation sometimes, and he would lead them, and he would go everywhere. And conferences, hold conferences in every major city of the world. And first conference is in Vrindavan. Do something before I leave, I want to see. So Maharaj was running around with other BA members to do something to please Prabhupada. So when the news came, Prabhupada said, the Bhaktivedanta Institute is now recognized. So Maharaj was continuing many conferences, international conference on science and religion. The hospitality at the Congress outshone even the legendary Japanese hospitality. And study of consciousness within science, 1990. And you can see many of the founders of consciousness studies in that conference. And a journal is inspired from this conference. And many, I suspect that happiness is not within the purview of physics. This is in 97 in Kolkata, another World Congress. Is a conference in Rome, 2004. Second is on origin of life. A book has come up a couple of years ago, the proceedings, life and its origin. And Maharaj started a conference series. Maharaj was associated with Meta-Nexus Institute Initiative, and he got awards from them. And he started ASSQ series in India. It's an annual conference. We do it every year. It started in 2006 by Maharaj, 2005 in Vrindavan, and we are doing it every year. He is a Nobel laureate in physics, and is the President of India. We came to our conference in Delhi, the 6th one. is in Bangalore, our conference in Bangalore, ISC. So we have every year one conference. I don't have the picture of audience. Last year we had conference on mathematics and reality. And we have a book on this, mathematics and reality. We had a conference in Rome on intuition and vision in art, science and spirituality. And a conference in 17, quantum physics and consciousness. So I can only show you the pictures because my time is over. And we have space, time, mind, summer school, winter schools. And we have an e-zine. We have course, online course coming up. And we have a conference coming up on spirituality and health in Bangalore. Those who are interested can contact me. He accomplished all the above with a gentleness that is unbelievable. Professor Jagadish Srivastava. And Richard Ernest Nobel Laureate in Chemistry. Dr. T.D. Singh represents a perfect role model how citizens, and in particular academics, should think, feel, and behave. And the best tribute could be none other than compliment from Srila Prabhupada. Svarupa Damodara is a first-class devotee. Thank you very much.
I had the pleasure of knowing Richard Thompson back in the 1980s and 1990s when I got to play a small part in helping him publish his first book. And with encouragement from members of the Bhaktivedanta Institute, I'm pleased to be currently writing his biography. So let me give you a brief overview of his life and career. And for more details, I urge you to visit richardlthompson.com. Prishni Sutton has done an extraordinary job of putting together the archive of Professor Thompson and links to video and audio lectures, so I encourage you to go there. What kind of guy was he? He was tall, he was thin, and he had very expressive hands, gesturing, a wicked sense of humor, and the kind of intellect that could seize a problem and devise innovative solutions. Thompson was a mathematician who earned his PhD at Cornell University in probability theory and statistical mechanics, but he had a problem. He was uncomfortable with the standard narrative being taught there, that life emerges from an interaction of particles and wave functions at some point in historic time. For Thompson, that lacked poetry. And as a mathematician, he didn't see how sophisticated forms could evolve spontaneously from lower orders of information. So to clear his head, he would go jogging every morning. Didn't have much of a fashion sense. He would put on a pair of crumply shorts and a rubber-soled street shoes. And sometimes he'd jog down to Ithaca Commons, where one day in 1972, in the Triangle Bookshop, he found a little volume titled Easy Journey to Other Planets, originally published in India in 1959 and written by someone named Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The book had artwork on the cover depicting a yogi in meditation, projecting himself out of his body, and Thompson was at first rather doubtful that any book with that kind of artwork on its cover was anything more than fantasy. But he was intrigued, and he sat down on a couch by the window and started reading the text. And there he found a description of consciousness as a force separate from matter, a self-aware spark of non-material energy that could be directly perceived through yoga and other contemplative practices. That little book, which drew its content from India's millennial Sanskrit texts, launched Thompson on a journey that lasted a lifetime. But at that moment of contact back in 1972 with ancient knowledge, he later remembered saying to himself, just thinking science wrong and an ancient point of view right, that's not sufficient. There has to be a way to reconcile these two. Could this Vedic ancient Indian perspective be a lens through which we can see reality as something more than matter? If consciousness did not evolve from within matter, was there something prior to the moment of the material creation? Where does consciousness come from? He also later described thinking, there must be more people like me out there, frustrated by the inconsistencies of reductionist science. And if I can put these two things together, an Eastern and Western way of knowing, maybe I can help others who are also looking for something more than mechanistic explanations of life. So by 1974, Thompson had become a student of Bhaktivedanta Swami, the author of that little book, and was invited to join other PhD students in the Bhaktivedanta Institute, our hosts here this weekend. Over the following 40 years, he managed both a career in research and academia and a prodigious outpouring of writings and recordings on the Vedic view of the universe. For the first few years, we've learned about Bhakti Svarupa Damodara Maharaj. They worked in partnership together, later known by his title, Bhakti Svarupa Damodara Maharaj. It was an extraordinary partnership, with Thompson and Singh co-authoring many of the Institute's first monographs. One of Thompson's objectives was to rectify the misimpression that the Sanskrit texts were nothing more than Hindu mythology. And he took that objective quite seriously, since he understood that there was a lot at stake. His training under his guru, Prabhupada, had made clear to him that much of the world's sadness and strife could be traced to ignorance of the nobility of consciousness. And he spent the balance of his life attempting to set the record straight. In 1981, he authored the first of a dozen full-length books, Mechanistic and Non-Mechanistic Science, which demonstrated that theories dominating modern science were insufficient for explaining complex phenomena such as consciousness and sophisticated biological form, and that alternate explanations could be found in Vedic texts such as the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. In his review of mechanistic and non-mechanistic science, Nobel laureate Eugene Wigner wrote that the descriptions of the Bhagavad Gita concerning the nature of existence that he found in Thompson's book were virtually identical with the descriptions Wigner had found in quantum mechanics. We're in the 1980s now, and the Bhaktivedanta Institute was a dynamic incubator for such projects, but it was no place to earn a living. So Thompson got a job at NASA, where it created innovative programs for satellite remote sensing. When I was his age, I got a job at IHOP, probably because my major in college was French literature. On top of his paid work at NASA, he wrote more than 30 professional papers, most of them published in peer-reviewed journals. I chose one example to show you here. In 1987, for a workshop sponsored by the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, he presented, along with colleague Narendra Goel, movable finite automata, a new tool for computer modeling of living systems, which was later published in the Journal of Theoretical Biology. Here he is with Goel. That's Goel on the left, not on Thompson's lap. Evolutionary biologist John Maynard Smith, in his concluding remarks for the conference, wrote, quote, "For me, one of the high spots of the conference was the account by Thompson and Goel. It was not only that I was envious of their skill at programming, more important was their demonstration of the process of self-organization, a process they have simulated with triumphant success." Here's the thing. Richard Thompson, known by friends and colleagues in the devotee circles by his initiated name Sariputta. He loved science. He was good at it. And because of that, it pained him to see science constrained by arbitrary limits of what can and cannot be incorporated into the standard scientific model. If the evidence points to something else, something more than the cold mechanics of nature, whether it be multiverses or the origins of consciousness, well, why not allow room for that and deal with the implications with an open mind? From my interviews with people who knew him well, it seems clear he had little patience for science burdened by committees and petty squabbling over funding and tenure. There were three drivers to his career. One was a conviction that life is something more beautiful than a collection of oscillating molecular balls and springs. Two, the excitement of discovery, making the connections between our humble perceptions as humans and the fabulous mysteries of the universe around us. And three, the size of the endeavor, the possibility of making a real, tangible difference, not only to improve people's lives materially, but to also encourage their spiritual pursuits. The late 1980s were a period of extraordinary productivity for Richard Thompson, which included production of numerous instructional videos. And in 1985, he published Vedic Cosmography and Astronomy, which addressed in greater detail the correspondence between the Sanskrit texts and the universe as perceived with sophisticated orbiting telescopes. I will mention only one other book. In 1993, Thompson and Michael Cremo, who is here with us today, co-authored Forbidden Archaeology, a provocative investigation of human antiquity. The Journal of Field Archaeology from Boston University described the work as combining, quote, a vast amount of both accepted and controversial evidence from the archaeological record to challenge existing views and expose the suppression of information concerning history and human origins. Michael described for me that this particular project sensitized him and Thompson to what they began calling knowledge filters, namely the tendency within the science community to marginalize or suppress or condemn anomalies that contradict the standard model. For example, in a scathing review, Skeptic magazine characterized Forbidden Archaeology as, quote, frustrating because it mixes together a genuine contribution to our understanding of the history of archaeology with a bewildering mass of absurd claims and an audaciously distorted view of the current state of paleoanthropology. Thompson loved it. He loved that. The more controversy, the merrier as far as he was concerned. This was just the kind of energy he was seeking to stimulate because he wanted to challenge the bad habit of blindly accepting what science has to say on face value. He wanted to draw attention to anomalies and to ancient teachings that had something useful, something important to contribute to our understanding of the nature of life and the universe. And he knew that scientists who dared do that risked being branded as heretics and losing not only their credibility, but also their chances for publication, funding, and tenure. Thompson understood the risks of that pushback and worked to demonstrate mathematically that there are credible correlations between modern calculations and the Puranic calculations, for instance, of the diameters of the planets, or the distance, the calculation of distances from Earth to the Sun and other planets, and the duration, the extent of orbits, which the Puranas describe with extraordinary accuracy. This information can be found in manuscripts dating back 1,000 years or more, long before sophisticated tools of spatial observation. Perhaps, after all, the ancients did know a thing or two. So if he were here today, I think Richard Thompson would offer you all words of encouragement that the brightest theorists inevitably work on the margins, on projects that just cannot be verified experimentally, at least not in the foreseeable future. Supergravity, grand unification, superstring, supersymmetry, brilliant stuff, but you can't prove any of this by experiment. So have we reached the limits of knowledge? Is the universe a cold, empty, cosmic joke? Is the final reality not only meaningless, but also unprovable? Thompson would steeple his fingers together, look up thoughtfully, and say, well, here's another point of view worthy of consideration. Let me close with a quote from Einstein that Thompson's teacher, Srila Prabhupada, once passed along to a student in a letter in 1968, and I believe it is a sentiment that in many ways summarizes the career of Richard Thompson. The fairest thing we can experience, Einstein wrote, is the mysterious. It is the fundamental emotion which stands at the cradle of true art and true science. He who knows it not and can no longer wonder, no longer feel amazement, is as good as dead, a snuffed out candle, a knowledge of the existence of something we cannot penetrate, of the manifestations of the profoundest reason and the most radiant beauty. It is this knowledge and this emotion that constitute the truly religious attitude. In this sense, and in this sense alone, I am a deeply religious man. Thank you very much.
That was brilliant. Next, we're going to have a presentation on a very special person, our Yamaraj. He was a dedicated graphic artist who contracted cancer some years ago, and he was determined to get all of Richard Thompson's books back into print. And for years he labored. Some of them were just manuscripts, some of them we didn't have films anymore, especially mechanistic science, just had some plates that some insects had gotten into, and some of them had to be retypeset. All the books are out on the table. He was able to get all of the books back in print, and he had one book left, and that was this one, the proceedings, the monographs from the 1977 conference. And he got that book finished, and after that, he had accomplished his life mission, and very shortly after that, he left us. And everyone who knew him had a particularly strong love for him. So our next presentation, let me see just for how long this will go. Our next presentation will be about 15 minutes on the special relationship that Robert Wintermute, was Yamaraj's name, had with the BI, with Richard Thompson and all.
Thank you for this opportunity to celebrate the memory of Robert Wintermute, Yamaraj Das, who is the longest serving member of the staff of the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. But before I do speak of his passing, one of the things that I was especially impressed with by this gathering here today is that Srila Prabhupada's first book, which was described here as Easy Journey to Other Planets, published in 1959-1960, was inspired by two of the most important scientific and technological events of the 20th century. First was the launch of the Sputnik satellite by the Soviet Union in 1957. And second was the discovery of antimatter around the same time. And I believe antimatter is now referred to as dark matter or dark energy. So whether you agree with this idea, first, Easy Journey to Other Planets said that the true antimatter particle is consciousness. And second, that travel to other planets and dimensions can easily be achieved by this particle of consciousness. Now, whether you agree with this or not, it was a very bold and unique approach to see the possibility of a coexistence and correlation of ancient Eastern philosophy with modern Western scientific discoveries. In general, the idea of consciousness as a field of study does not excite Western scientists. As we've heard here today, it generates quite a bit of pushback. But there are researchers who have made headway. One example that I've looked at in a layman's way is the study into reincarnation at the University of Virginia by Dr. Ian Stevenson and subsequently by the institute that he set up at the University of Virginia. And it was said of Dr. Stevenson by one of his colleagues, "You are either making a colossal mistake or you are the Galileo of the 20th century." Now, we've heard from Dr. Resnick yesterday that Galileo had a rather hard time of it, and I suspect that some of you will encounter similar problems, if somewhat less brutal opposition than Galileo did. But I hope that in the future you will all be considered the Galileos of the 21st century. I would add here that there is a common misconception that spiritual life and practice involves the complete rejection of this world and a Luddite attitude towards technology and science. Srila Prabhupada did not belong to that school of thought. His understanding was that all features of the material world are a reflection of a spiritual reality, and that alignment of the material energy to a spiritual purpose is the fulfillment of human life. The activities of the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust are just such an alignment. We use modern printing and communication technology to enlighten, and many of us are privileged to participate in the work of the Trust, and one such of our colleagues was Robert Wintermute, Yamaraj Das. And although we've seen very wonderful presentations of what we might call the generals of the Bhaktivedanta Institute and Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, Robert Wintermute, Yamaraj Das, was one of the soldiers in the trenches, you might say. And his service, though less distinguished and celebrated, still had a tremendous effect on those who experienced it. Robert was born in 1948 and grew up outside Portland, Oregon. He attended Portland State College for 2 years, majoring in art, and then transferred to the University of Oregon in Eugene. He dove into the 60s counterculture, and his interest in Eastern philosophy inspired him to buy a copy of Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. And that was one of what we call today the Purple Gita, one of those, which was, and his attraction to that particular book was because it was recommended by Allen Ginsberg in one of the in the introduction, and so this gave it, you might say, the imprimatur. And after a couple of years of visiting the temple in Portland and he moved to the West Virginia farm community of New Vrindavan in 1971. And he was drawn by the idea of living a natural life in the country. In 1972, he was initiated by Srila Prabhupada, and in 1973, he was recruited by the East Coast branch of the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. Interestingly enough, in 1972 was the founding year of the Book Trust, so he was in the Book Trust right from the beginning, and subsequently spent 45 years in the service of Srila Prabhupada and the Trust. He then moved to New York in 1973 and received training in layout and design for Back to Godhead magazine and for Srila Prabhupada's books. As an aside, I'd just like to mention that next month, on February the 14th, we celebrate the 75th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada's founding of Back to Godhead magazine in 1944. In those days, when he joined the Book Trust, layout work was all done by hand. In other words, printouts of text and photographs. I see Robert Grant here shaking his head and smiling at how it was in those days. And then these printouts were pasted onto boards, shot by a camera, and then these photographic things were then created. They created what are called color separations: cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, which were then given to the printer and then shot onto the plates, which actually ran the printing presses. So he did all of that by hand. He moved with the BBT when they moved to Los Angeles in 1975, and he was part of the team that produced 17 books in 2 months in 1975, which was a landmark in the you might say, the life of the BBT, and created a competence and created a spirit that was to last through to this day. Yeah. After becoming expert, of course, the digital age came upon us, and Robert easily made the transition to digital layout work. He's been designing and laying out BTG since that time. He was also an active photographer, and he shot many of the photos in the magazine. He also became very expert at creating art for the magazine from stock images. And we have a few examples here. We could have the next. Different articles where he would arrange and assemble different artworks. Yes, thank you. His association with Dr. Richard Thompson, which was mentioned earlier, began with first the articles in Back to Godhead magazine, and then more closely he laid out the first book, Mechanistic and Non-Mechanistic Science, which was described earlier. And he then, they enjoyed their collaboration very much, and so Yamaraj became Dr. Thompson's go-to guy for layout. Now, after the passing of Dr. Thompson, he helped, as was described also, in with the team that is now working to keep Dr. Thompson's contribution in the public eye by the website and so on. Now, in his personal life, Robert Wintermute Yamaraj Das was a celibate monk and practiced conscientiously the disciplines of spiritual life. He would rise early and attend the 4:30 a.m. temple program and chant his prescribed number of mantras. He maintained a strictly vegetarian diet, as well as observing the restrictions against intoxication and gambling. At the same time, he was diverted by computer games. And he attended the occasional LAN parties. For those who are uninitiated, LAN stands for Local Area Network. It is when a number of 20-somethings gather together in someone's garage and they put together an array of computers and then compete fiercely with each other to win these computer games. So that was one of his diversions. And also, he liked to go to the paintball range with the 20-somethings. And apart from that, he also kept his Beretta 9mm in perfect, and its reloading equipment in perfect condition. So that's a little aside. About 10 years ago, he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is a form of cancer that attacks the bones. It is incurable, and the doctors examining him told him that his life expectancy was approximately 10 years. He underwent conventional treatments and took herbal medications to counter the side effects. Practically until the last few days, he was confident that he would be cured, and he would and could be cured. Now, throughout his life, his monastic life, he slept on the floor. But a few months before his passing, when his disease took a turn for the worst, his pain was so great that he could no longer raise himself up from the floor. So for the first time in his devotional life, he was persuaded to sleep on a bed. Multiple myeloma is considered one of the most painful of the various forms of cancer, but he was very stoic and did as much as he could to continue his service. As a stopgap measure, he consented to have Govinda Cordua, who had worked for the North Europe BBT, do some of the layout for the magazine. And Govinda's first efforts were met with, oh, I guess I'll just have to do this all over again. So he was very particular and very conscientious. Govinda did, however, manage to master the task, and he's now doing very well. In his last 2 days, he mentioned to a few people, I don't think I'm going to make it anymore. I'm going to die soon. His personal caretaker observed a very deep shift in him, and there was an amazing glow on his face where he seemed peaceful from within, fearless of death. He left during the auspicious Brahma Muhurta hour. He was very inspiring and much loved by our BTG team, and we'll certainly miss him deeply and his service back to Godhead. Just before his passing, His Holiness Giriraj Swami wrote to him, and we can only hope that we too will remember these sentiments and instructions at our encounter with death. My dear Yamaraj Prabhu, soon you will be leaving us and your cancer-ridden body to continue your service to Srila Prabhupada in more favorable circumstances. We wish you well on your onward spiritual journey, and we pray for your smooth transition from this world to the next by His divine grace. You have been a good friend and devotee, and we will miss you dearly. In fact, our hearts are filled with love for you. But we take consolation in the thought that we will be together again in service to Srila Prabhupada in another ISKCON in the spiritual sky. Now feel free to just fix your mind on the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada, on the sound of the holy name, and topics of the Lord and His devotees, and depend on their causeless mercy. Hare Krishna, your eternal servant, Giriraj Swami. Thank you very much.
Actually, I didn't properly introduce our dear Ranjit Prabhu, and I apologize for that. Ranjit is, for a long time, the treasurer of the BBT and a long-time supporter of BI activities, attends some of our gatherings and gives us great inspiration. Thank you very much for a moving and heartfelt tribute. I'd also like to embarrass another person here. I have the special privilege of being able to do that as the convener. We have with us another one of the original BI crew, the one who Prabhupada inspired in many, many ways to push the BBT on. There are many letters to this person from Prabhupada emphasizing the importance of the BI. And this person, who I'll introduce in a moment, understands the very core inner mission of what we're trying to do and came here to help us in various ways and is also working on the TOVP. And I'd like to offer a special appreciation and welcome to our very own Robert Grant, Rameshwar Prabhu. I say this not just to embarrass him, but from my heart. It's a special privilege that he's here, and I am looking forward to a lot of good discussions with him over the next few days of what we do right and what we do wrong. Next on our agenda, we are going to have a short talk on the BI in Russia. And where's our speaker? Okay.
One, two, three. Yes. Good morning. Dear colleagues, let me speak Russian, because if I will speak English, you will not feel the difference between my Russian and my English. So my translator is Alexander Zalivin. Please. Иди сюда, иди сюда. Не входи, неудобно, сюда садись. Да. Хорошо. Да иди сюда, садись на стол. Yes. Конечно, так удобнее работать, да. Итак, доклад называется «Философия истории Российского института Бхактивиданты». Этот доклад представляет собой определенную ретроспекцию или размышление о пути, пройденном Российским институтом Бхактивиданты за 30 лет его существования. Владимир Сокол, соавтор этого доклада, доктор философских наук, автор яркой и глубокой монографии на тему «Сознание против мышления». К сожалению, он не смог приехать на эту конференцию. Но он передал свою монографию автореферата диссертации, и желающие могут взять ее экземпляры минут через 15, например. Да? Yes, yes. Кстати, Владимир Сокол ввел в научный обиход понятие санкиртана. При этом он ссылался на Дживу Госвами и других авторов. И, кстати, это понятие можно встретить в данной монографии. Yes. So, мы посмотрим на события прошлого не глазами историка, но глазами таким ретроспективным и проницательным, рефлексирующим взором философа. И в этом случае нам удастся проследить, как с течением времени менялись видения, подходы и компетентность российских вайшнавов-ученых. Можно обнаружить, что Российский институт Бхактивиданты прошел 4 этапа компетентности в процессе своего 30-летнего формирования. Следует заметить, что эти этапы могут иметь универсальный характер. Подобные организации могут идти примерно тем же путем. Итак, этап первый. Популяризация философии сознания Кришны – это конец 80-х, 90-е годы 20-го столетия. И, как мы уже поняли, на первом этапе формирования Института Бхактивиданты в России вайшнавы занимались популяризацией философии гаудия-вайшнавизма в научных кругах. И при этом нередко использовались личные связи преданных с академическими учеными. Вы можете видеть фото 90-х лет прошлого столетия. на первом фото видно, что есть такое название «Культура, неподвластная времени». Это круглый стол, на котором присутствовали русские вайшнава-ученые.
On the first photo, you can see the unconditional culture slogan.
Неподвластное времени, да. Yes. Идем дальше. На данном фото вы можете увидеть, может быть, знакомые лица. То есть это Вадим Тунеев, или он же Вадьянадх Дас, и он же Госвами Бхактивигьяна Госвами Махараджа.
You can see the common faces. It's Vadim Tuneev, who's also known as Vaidyanatha Das, and later his holiness Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj.
На фото слева внизу некто Влад Крицкий или Вишвамитра Дас.
Vlad Kritsky or Vishwamitra Das, his photo is located in the left down corner of the picture.
На следующем фото Матаджи Анандини и преданные вайшнавы-ученые из подмосковного города Дубна.
So Mataji Anandini and other scientists, Vaishnava scientists from a city located near Moscow, it's called Thoudam.
И таким образом, в 90-е годы деятельность по популяризации учения сознания Кришны протекала одновременно в нескольких крупных городах. Кстати, это Радха Дамодар Прабhu и Вишвамитра Дас также, первые преданные.
It is the first devotees of Russia. They also engaged in popularizing the Vaishnava philosophy in scientific circles during the last 90s.
То есть сказать об этих преданных?
We can say some words about them.
Хорошо. В частности, в Москве и в городах таких, как Москва и Тюмень, институт Бхактивиданты был официально зарегистрирован.
In Moscow and such cities as Tumen, Institute of Bhaktivedanta had official registration.
Тюменский институт Бхактивиданты назывался Институтом ведической культуры.
Tumen branch of Institute of Bhaktivedanta had the name Institute of Vedical Culture.
Он имел филиалы в таких городах, как Екатеринбург, Омск, Пермь и Челябинск.
It had branches in such cities as Ekaterinburg, Omsk, Perm, and Челябинск.
Институт ведической культуры возглавлял Владимир Сокол или Васушешха Дас.
It was headed by Vasusheshwar Das or Vladimir Sokol. We mentioned him before.
Кстати, это фотодокумент, свидетельство о регистрации Московского института Бхактивиданты от 31 августа 1992 года.
It is a certificate of registration dated 31st August of 1992. It is a registration of Moscow Institute of Bhaktivedanta.
Ой, что это? Второй этап развития, второй этап. Он был связан с презентацией философии гаудия-вайшнавизма в рамках западной компаративистики.
This stage is characterized with the presentation of Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy in the frame of Western comparative philosophy.
Данный этап характеризуется обращением вайшнавов и ученых к научной методике сопоставительного анализа западной и восточной культур.
During this stage, Vaishnava philosophers used the comparison method of comparing the Western and Eastern cultures.
То есть научная методика сопоставления западной и восточной культур – это и есть расшифровка понятия компаративистика.
So, comparative philosophy consists of comparing Western and Eastern cultures. That is the meaning of this term
Yes.
and method Vaishnavas used in the beginning of the 21st century.
В этот период выходит в свет достаточно яркая и полная монография Сутапы Даса или Сергея Ватмана «Бенгальский вайшнавизм».
This period has ripe fruit. It is a monography of Sutapa Das. It's called
Книга получает положительные отзывы в академических кругах. Мгм. В Россию, ой, да что ж такое, sorry. В Россию с циклом лекций и семинаров приезжает Майкл Кремо. То есть это фрагмент из газетной статьи с фотографией Майкла Кремо. Правда, очень плохо видно, но тем не менее это он. Yes, да. Метод компаративистики лежал в основе многих диссертационных исследований, написанных в этот период. Например, коммуникация эстетического в традиционном обществе на примере бенгальского вишнуизма. Абхинанда дас. Или, например, антропология классической веданты. Эволюция религиозно-философских идей. Авторы этой диссертации Нанда Гопал из Новосибирска. Или Барнаул, yes. Барнаул, да. Хорошо, Алтай. Yes. Следующий период, второй период. Вернее, это не следующий, это тот же период. Excuse me. Да, sorry, да, тот же. Второй период также характеризуется активным участием вайшнавов ученых в научных конференциях. Да. Академическое сообщество принимает преданных как равных себе. Например, это фотография с 4-го Всероссийского философского конгресса. И вайшнавы, ученые, участники этого конгресса, Нижний Новгород, июль 2012 года. Вот это, кстати... Yes. Да, кстати, итак, это Васушешвадаст или Сокол, Владимир Сокол. Это Тимощук или Абхинанда, Прабу, доктор наук. Это доктор наук физико-математических Асташкевич или Шатругна из Санкт-Петербурга. Это ваша служанка. Yes. Наталья, да. Итак, идем дальше. So. Да, следующее. Компаративистские исследования в полной мере соответствуют требованиям времени и существующим научным трендам. Thank you. Тренд, да. Ничего. Это наш друг Ручи Тьяги из Индии, она также доктор философских наук, она отвечает на вопросы слушателей. Да. Хорошо. Хорошо. Так как у нас осталось немного времени, нам придется немного сократить наше выступление. Да? И хорошо бы, если бы мы нашли 31-й слайд. 31 слайд, да. Thank you. Это третий этап. Он называется так. Презентация научных основ сознания Кришны как универсальной надкультурной парадигмы в рамках западной постнеклассической рациональности. Сможете перевести? Да. Третий этап.
The presentation of scientific basis of Krishna consciousness as universal and subcultural paradigm in the frame of Western post-neoclassical rationality.
Есть так. Таким образом, кстати, да. Успел? Не просто было. Да, молодец, справился, да, действительно. То есть на данном этапе осуществляется попытка формулирования альтернативной научной парадигмы, ни больше, ни меньше, основанной на вайшнавской онтологии и гносеологии.
On this stage, an effort takes place to formulate the alternative scientific paradigm. Try to understand it. It was based on Vaishnava ontology and gnoseology.
И здесь есть один важный момент, именно отличительная особенность российского движения Бхактивиданта института.
And it has some certain moment which characterizes exactly Russian Institute of Bhaktivedanta.
Это феноменология, которая, как нам кажется, очень близка методологии ведийских школ санки, йоги и веданты. Да. То есть феноменология.
It is phenomenology. As we think, it is very close to Vedic philosophy of Sankhya, Vedanta, and
Да. Санки, йога. Йога, да, yes. This is, это автор феноменологии Госсер, Эдмонд Госсер.
the author of phenomenology. You can see him on the picture.
Почему именно феноменология? Потому что она еще круче, чем, допустим, Кант, отделяет трансцендентальные области, трансцендентные от материальных, и делает это глубже и наукообразно. Да.
Even deeper than Kant, Husserl makes the difference between science and culture.
Да, есть.
He's
И
a kind of very strict scientist.
здесь ряд диссертаций,
There are some list of dissertations.
которые также можно отнести уже к данному периоду. Это уже не компаративистика.
It is not comparative dissertations. They are here in this third stage.
То есть это полноценные научные труды.
It is full science scientific works.
Да. Это также это защита диссертации Дамодара Пандита. Да.
Damodara Pandit Prabhu is
В Нижнем Новгороде. Да. И, наконец, ну ладно, это уже мы пролистываем все. Четвертый этап, ой, простите, sorry. Четвертый этап. Очень серьезный этап, и это формирование синергетической модели вайшнавской научной школы, релевантной современной научной методологии.
This fourth stage will be spoken a little later. Its main characteristic that synergetic model of Vaishnava scientist school is deformed, and it is relevant to modern scientific methodology.
То есть я хотела вам рассказать, но уже нет времени. Очень интересный один момент, связанный с видами научной рациональности. Немножко позже, видимо, или уже в индивидуальном порядке. Расскажу, да. Ну, позже, да? Хорошо. Итак, что характерно для последнего этапа? Да, все есть. Thank you. Ну, хорошо, это тогда уже... Тогда... Один момент. То есть подробно о четвертом этапе расскажет как раз Дмитрий Попов сегодня в час дня на заседание секции, да? Мгм. Да. И одно маленькое добавление, Дело в том, что в Екатеринбурге появился первый ашрам Института Бхактивиданты. Им руководит Васушешка Дас, да? И да, Владимир Сокол, и как раз Дмитрий Попов, представитель этого ашрама. И как раз возникновение ашрама Бхактивиданты, это можно его отнести как раз к третьему этапу формирования Института Бхактивиданты в России. That's all. Thank you very much.
And we have an added surprise for 3 minutes, unscheduled, unplanned, and special. Tell me when you're ready. And we'll want to dim the lights for this. Do we have a light dimmer? If Vishaka, could you come up here a moment? There is a special, Bhaktivedanta Institute is based on the mentorship, the inspiration, the teachings in every way on Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And recently a documentary was made about his life and precepts by Vishaka and Yadabara. You ready? In 1972, I went to the Mayapur festival, and I was a high school teacher in India. I wasn't a devotee, and I went to the first Mayapur festival. The land had just been bought, so there were no buildings except a hut for Prabhupada and some tents. And there were 70 devotees there, and one guest for them to preach to. That was me. The only mechanical device was one of these number dispensers of who gets to me next. At least it felt that way. So I had the good fortune of Prabhupada being merciful and letting me sit with him all day for many days. But when I was there, I met Vishaka and Yadabara, and they were, with no offense intended to anybody, normal. They were a couple. He had been in the Peace Corps. They were just normal people. Hadn't come from much of a hippie background. I had aspired, but I wasn't good at it. I was told I like showering too often to qualify. And so they, so when I met them, I said, yes, this is good. Normal, really cool people. And then we stayed friends all these years. It was Yadabara who actually convinced my wife Bhakti of devotional service. And so I'm very indebted to them. Now we're going to give a 3-minute trailer. Is any words you want to say, Vishaka? Okay, just a 3-minute trailer on the movie. Let her go. And then we'll go on to a break. The break will be shortened by 5 minutes. Yogeshwar will announce all that, and we'll talk about what the breakout sessions are about. And lunch will be delayed till 1 o'clock. Thank you very much.
My spiritual master, he is calling.
He said that he would like to go to America.
I said, are you crazy? The old man, you are going to die.
Someone told you the story, you wouldn't believe it.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
He's 70 years old, he has no money, he's starting an effort, and it turns into an international movement.
Everyone is thinking, I'm American, I'm Indian, I'm European, I'm Australian, but I'm not this body. I am spirit soul.
He looked like the Prime Minister of the galaxy.
Prabhupada was quite unlike any teacher we'd ever known. There was no gap between what he spoke and what he lived.
The Vedic scriptures gave some sort of backbone to my life.
People were joining left and right. Everywhere people went, there were Hare Krishnas.
Many would consider members of the Hare Krishna sect to be dangerous religious fanatics, but the Krishnas say they're simply misunderstood.
People would kidnap us and try to deprogram us.
The more he got attacked, the more energized he became. Prabhupada loved a good fight.
He was actually bringing some kind of ray of light to the right place.
Regardless of race, of religion, of nationality, we are all brothers and sisters.
If I see this person, this soul, struggling just like I'm struggling in my body, I have a reason to love you. That's deep.
His words carry so much power. It's a full expression of his heart that comes through.
The perfection of this life is to understand oneself. This is the beginning.
CD is available for sale at the book table, and Vishaka will even sign a copy of your CD, though not actually on the CD disc itself, because it kind of screws it up. But it is available right out there. I guess it's a DVD, so if anybody would like one to take back to their respective countries, please stop at the book table. With that, our Master of Ceremonies is tied up for a moment, so I'll continue. We are going to take a break. Right now, we are running only 30 minutes late, so we're going to take a break until 11:35, and then we're going to meet back here for another plenary session. That will prove to be one of the most interesting plenary sessions we have. This one will be done by our own Murli Gopal and Mauricio Garrido, and it's a session